Imagine for a second that we just found a secret final manuscript from one of history's greatest poets, written in the very last year of his life. Well, that's exactly what we're digging into today. We're exploring the recently discovered final thoughts of the 14th century master Francesco Petrarch. And this isn't his polished public poetry. Oh no. This is something far, far more personal. The manuscript kicks off with this incredibly blunt line. You have to understand, Petrarch's entire life was spent defending his choices. His obsession with ancient books, his famous love for Laura, his desire for solitude. But here, at the end of it all, he's done. He's laying down his arms and writing something raw, unpolished, and just brutally honest. So picture this. We're in Arquà, Italy. It's 1373. Petrarch, as he puts it, can feel winter coming for him. He knows the clock is ticking. So he decides to finally explore the one part of himself that he feels he's been circling his whole life but never truly understood. That deep, inner corner where shadow and light meet. He actually called this final work Liber Umbræ Lucis, which translates to the Book of Shadow and Light. And in it, he wrestles with life's absolute biggest questions, all through the lens of a single powerful idea he developed right at the very end. And that brings us to the absolute heart of this manuscript. Seriously, if you take only one thing away from our little deep dive here, it has to be this concept, a philosophy he simply called the threshold. It is the key that unlocks everything else. So what on earth is the threshold? Well, for Petrarch, it was like he finally found a name for the space he had been living in his entire life without realizing it. It's not about choosing between two things, but about learning to live in the space between them. Here's how Petrarch himself puts it. He describes it as a moment of pure suspension. He says the soul is not leaning forward into hope, not falling back into memory, but poised. He's talking about a moment of total, powerful, and absolute presence. And to make this idea less abstract, to make it concrete, he uses these beautiful personal examples. He compares it to a hawk just hanging motionless on the wind, or that fuzzy, strange moment when you're not quite asleep but not quite awake. And most powerfully, he reimagines his lifelong love for Loris, not as a torment but as a threshold, poised perfectly between the real woman of flesh and blood and the eternal idea she became for him. And this idea, the threshold, it becomes his roadmap to peace. Instead of seeing his life as this constant, brutal war between opposing forces, he starts to see it as a delicate and even necessary dance. For most of his life, Petrarch felt like he was being torn in two by these forces. I mean, that's what his famous poetry is all about, right? This endless swing between hope and fear, joy and his deep melancholy. He felt like he had to pick a side and destroy the other. But his threshold philosophy, it changed everything. He has this profound, life-altering realization. These forces aren't enemies at all. He writes his amazing line. He says, the shadow isn't fighting the light. The shadow is what the light creates. You can't have one without the other. They're completely intertwined. And he uses this perfect analogy of the sundial he had in his garden. Think about it. Without the shadow cast by the little needle in the middle, you can't tell what time it is. The darkness is literally what allows you to measure the light. And in the same way, he realized, our moments of fear and sadness are what give shape and meaning to our joy. So as you can imagine, this new understanding totally reshaped his inner world. It changed how he thought about everything, especially time, memory, and even the act of writing itself, the thing that had defined his entire life. He starts thinking about time not just as chronos, the tick-tock of the clock, one moment after another. He starts focusing on kairos, those moments of deep, significant, pregnant time. He realizes a life's meaning isn't found in its length, in the river's flow, but in its depth. That first moment he saw Laura, that wasn't just a tick of the clock. That was pure kairos. And with this new perspective, the past isn't something that's just over and done with. For the old Petrarch, it becomes an active, living part of the present moment. It's like all of his past selves, the little boy, the young lover, the famous poet, they're all right there, coexisting inside him at the same time. And this leads to one of the most startling and frankly haunting ideas in the whole manuscript. He says memory is a form of real presence. When he sits and remembers his dead friends, or Laura, he feels they are literally with him, influencing his thoughts, even judging his writing. He's not just imagining it. To him, it's a real kind of life that continues on inside of him. Okay, so armed with this new philosophy of thresholds, this new understanding of shadow and light, and this idea of a living past, Petrarch finally turns to face the ultimate mystery, his own mortality. He looks back at his life's greatest ambition, fame. That laurel crown he was so proud of receiving in Rome, he now sees it was just a decoration. It was an empty crown that honored a kind of fictional character, a public mask. It never touched his true self, or filled what he calls the emptiness within. So, if worldly success turned out to be hollow, what's real? What is actually waiting for him at the final threshold of death? This is the very last question he needs to answer for himself. And his answer is just beautiful. He stops seeing death as an ending and starts seeing it as a metamorphosis. He writes that a caterpillar has no way of imagining what it's like to be a butterfly. Its entire world has to end for a new, incredible one to begin. For Petrarch, death isn't an extinction. It's a transformation. And ultimately, Petrarch finds this place of incredible, profound peace. This one line just summarizes everything, the striving, the fighting. It's all over. He's not afraid anymore. He has lived his life, and the shape of that life is complete. It is enough. And this is what's so powerful. Petrarch's wisdom from nearly 700 years ago feels like it's speaking directly to us now. His final work isn't really about his life. It's an invitation for us to recognize the thresholds in our own lives, those moments where we're poised between what we were and what we might become. So the question he leaves us with is this: what threshold are you standing on today?